So there's an article about America's era of being a unipolar nation slash power coming to an end. This is from RT, Russia Today. How the year 2022 ended the American unipolar era. The post-Cold War world had long been crumbling, and after this year, it's finally gone. This is from a political analyst who's writing this. The year 2022 is coming to an end. It has been a year which has significant consequences for the future of global geopolitics and will be remembered as such in the history books. Specifically, it marked the closing of 3 decades of American unipolarity, and we all know what happened in those 3 decades, nothing but US/American terrorism around the world, especially in the Middle East and the greater Middle East, which had begun with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 and forced through a new multipolar world consisting of numerous competing great powers. When the USSR fell in 1991, the US entered a period of unprecedented dominance whereby it finalized its position as a global hegemon. Its political, economic, and military power was unparalleled, and as such it had free rein to shape the global order to its liking. It is no surprise that in this period the US did not pursue great power competition, but actively vested itself in scores of regime change operations, 100% it did, across every continent as it sought to implement what George H.W. Bush described as, quote, the New World Order. This included wars in Iraq, former Yugoslavia, Libya, Afghanistan, and Syria, to name but a few. Likewise, it was able to use its undisputed power over institutions such as the United Nations to pile sanctions on smaller countries who defied its will, such as Iran and North Korea, which it still currently does. Look at Iran. Iran's a very good example. The U.S. doing Israel's bidding and placing sanctions and embargoes on Iran in order to force it to do Israel's bidding. Currently, what we're seeing with the Iran/U.S. Foreign policies slash relations is based on what Israel wants. Anything when it comes to the Middle East is based on what Israel wants, according to America, and that's how corrupt our politicians are. That's how corrupt American politicians are. Owing to the hubris of its Cold War victory and the belief in the inevitability of its ideology, or quote the end of history, the U.S. during this period did not seek to counter states such as Russia or China precisely because it believed, at least initially, that these states were on a predetermined path to westernization and liberalization. As such, the U.S. actively promoted globalization through free trade and investment, perceiving them as a vehicle for its own values. Fast forward to 2022, and the last remnants of these premature hopes have been swept away. Although long in the making, the past 12 months marked the ultimate consolidation of a new geopolitical era. Russia's military operation in Ukraine proved to be a decisive turning point, which represented the final break from the world established by the fall of the USSR. The main catalyst of this shift was the US itself, which no longer liked what the globalization it once championed. They said championing. It was once championing, was now providing. That being the depletion of its hegemony through the resurgence of rival states which did not reform to its liking, Russia and China being examples. Seeing the rise of these countries which had, through America's own approval, integrated themselves within the global economy and prospered but not adopted the American values as anticipated, the U.S. veered toward great power competition and began to provoke geopolitical conflict with a view to reasserting control over its wayward allies. This became extremely obvious in the foreign policy of the Biden administration, which sought to take an uncompromising approach to the expansion of NATO, igniting the conflict in Ukraine, while also aggressively accelerating attempts to contain China through the creation of new alliance systems such as AUKUS AUK-US, and accelerating tensions over the Taiwan Strait. These actions by America have changed the world. While the average Westerner, deceived by the mainstream media discourse, blames Putin, and this article is so right, the average American is so brainwashed by its mainstream corporate media into thinking a variety of things, including, American exceptionalism, the idea that America can police the world and has that right to police the world, which it doesn't. Absolutely doesn't. It doesn't have that morally, ethically, or any other way. As a matter of fact, it's bankrupt morally, ethically, and so on. The reality is the U.S. is the one that has actively dismantled the post-Cold War 1991 international order precisely because it believes it now comes at the expense of American power. Part of this is the effort to actively roll back globalization by creating geopolitical conflict. The U.S. strives to reassert its military influence whilst forcing its allies to decouple from the targeted enemy country. That's absolutely true. Just look at the nuclear talks with Iran and Western/European countries that the U.S. Subverted. Even if that comes at a great expense to that ally's economy, the U.S. has sought to rip up energy markets with Russia, so European countries are forced to buy American gas instead. Likewise, it is bulldozing the entire semiconductor supply chain while forcibly rebuilding it around itself in a bid to isolate China. In doing so, it aims to destroy the integration of certain regions, such as Russia with Europe, China with Asia. The implications of these actions are huge as the U.S. tries to reclaim its hegemony. Other countries are subsequently forced to increase their national capabilities and strategic autonomy to prevent themselves from being dominated. Absolutely true. This has created new arms races, new technology races, and also the expansion of blocs alternate to the West, such as BRICS, the Shanghai Corporation, SCO, and more. Whether the U.S. likes it or not, this is the reality of the multipolarity it sought to prevent in the first place. The world now increasingly resembles what it looked like before 1914, or worse, before 1939, where there are not just two rival great powers, but a plethora of nations scrambling for influence. While the U.S. strives to maintain its hegemony, it faces off against the challengers of China and Russia, but there are other rising powers too, including India and Indonesia. As such, the year 2022 will stand as a definitive moment of change. The post-1991 world, although long fluttering, is finally gone. The new world is an increasingly uncertain arena of geopolitical conflict, making it less stable, less certain, and more divided than at any point since the end of the Second World War. This isn't a new Cold War as such, it's a new great game. And then it says, the statements, views, and opinions expressed in this column are solely those of the author and do not necessarily represent those of RT Russia Today. This is a good thing. We've seen what 3 decades of American hegemony / unipolarity looks like. And it's been nothing but violence, terrorism on America's end, murder, rape, all of that kind of stuff, which America has yet to be prosecuted by the International Criminal Court for. And so the end of hopefully a unipolarity world, the end of U.S. hegemony, hopefully, has arrived. What does this mean in terms of other countries? This article mentioned India. India has its issues. There is definitely concern when it comes to India and its Hindu nationalist sentiments and government. It's been a increasingly, fascist right-wing government and nation, and it's been scary to see. But it's refreshing to see other countries such as Indonesia, have a voice. This article also mentioned Russia, China having a voice. They're good counterbalance to America and the West in general, which marches in unison. Unfortunately, the West is not, independent of each other. Unfortunately, they are one big hive mindset, whereby they've allowed America to do whatever they wanted. Just look at Iraq, just look at Afghanistan. None of them have brought the U.S. To the ICC or have sought to sanction and embargo them like they have with other countries like Iran. So the end of an American unipolar / hegemonic world is a good thing. But what do you guys think? If you're on YouTube, leave a comment, subscribe, and like the video. If you are listening to this on Anchor /podcast, then leave me a tweet. Let me know what you guys think about this. I see it as a good thing. What do you guys think? Is this a positive thing? Will this lead to less bloodshed around the world, and especially by American /imperialists? Or do you think this is just going to be, a cause for more war, violence, and bloodshed around the world?